everyone. This is Lynn Oliver, and you may know me because for 50 years I was executive director and co-founder of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And in the last several years, that wonderful job is being filled by Sarah Baker, and I am the managing director of the Impact and Legacy Fund of the SCBWI, which is our charitable and social action division. And we do a tremendous number of great projects, all to benefit the kids of the world and the children's writers, illustrators, and translators of our beautiful world. So I want to welcome you tonight to our third annual Changemakers special, brought to you by the Impact and Legacy Fund. It will run about 75 minutes. It's full of lots of interesting guests and people who will inspire you to show you how change can be created, how we can make a better world through our work as creators of children's books. So I think it's time we get on with the show. There are several reminders. One is the chat is open. Feel free to use it. Just be kind and behave yourselves. We're a very small world of children's book people, and we want to always be loving and supportive of one another. Also, you can watch the show all at once, which we hope you do, because we have raffles. We have raffles. We have raffles. Did you hear we have raffles? And so we'll be giving away books throughout the program. If for some reason you can't stay for the whole thing, you'll be able to watch the show asynchronously for free. There's never a charge for ILF programs. And you'll be able to watch it on YouTube or on the SCBWI channel. So you can watch it, and I'm going to say this word because it really gives me great pleasure, asynchronistically. And it's not often that you get to use a word like that in front of a group of over 1,000 people. So thank you for indulging me. So with that, let's begin the program. Settle back, take a nice cup of tea or a nice shot of scotch or whatever it is your pleasure. And let's get into making change through children's books. I'm here with our opening guest. We're having a fireside chat. Hold the fireside because I'm in Los Angeles and it's 95 degrees. But the intent is to get to know our first guest, whose name is Maulik Pancholy, and you will know him. You will recognize him as an actor and a television star, as Jonathan on 30 Rock and from Phineas and Ferb and many other shows. But he has another life as a children's book author, and a very fine children's book author. His debut book, which I happen to have right here, is called The Best at It. It's a wonderful coming of age middle grade novel. His second book titled,
You know what? I happen to have it.
what a
Right.
surprise.
So I flash it up. It's Nikhil Out Loud. This is my second one.
Second book, and he's hard at work on his third book, which will be a YA book. And we wanted everyone to meet him because to hear his story, to hear how he got involved in children's books, why he writes the kind of books he does, what kickback he's gotten from those books, and how that can inspire you. So that's a little outline of what we're about to talk about. So, Maulik, welcome. So let's start with how a handsome actor such as yourself decided to write a children's book.
Well, thank you for the question. I just want to say hi to everyone, and what an honor it is to get to speak to the Society of Children's Books writers and illustrators. As an actor who came into writing, I will say that the children's book industry, the community has welcomed me with such open arms, and it's such a beautiful community, and
It
I
is.
take the honor of being invited into it very seriously and with a lot of love. And so, thank you for meeting me with that same love. I think from a very early age, I loved disappearing into stories. I loved disappearing into characters. My parents tell me that when I was 5, I told them that I wanted to be an actor, which I don't know where that came from. Most actors have this moment, the epiphany, like I saw someone on stage. For me, I think it was just that I loved stories so much. And then as I got into those preteen middle school years where I started to feel a little awkward and uncomfortable in my body, where my sexuality was beginning to burgeon, and I didn't even really have the language or understanding of what it was, but I knew that I was different. I knew that perhaps that was going to be a liability for me. I think those stories started to become even more important. It became literally a place for me to find safety, a place that the disappearing felt in a way life-saving, it was this place to run away to. And I think that that's what I thought acting would be. And then fast forward to many years later, I get to Los Angeles and like casting directors were like, you're brown, you're Indian. It was like the only thing that they saw about me. And I realized, oh, you can't actually run away. As I started to get to play some roles, like some of the ones that you mentioned, and I got to kind of embrace my Indian American identity, in fact, also embrace my LGBTQ identity. I think when I was doing the show Weeds, I think it was like one of the first times that we ever saw like an Indian American gay character on television. So I got to see what that representation really meant for people. And then around maybe like a few years after that, in 2016, I had lunch with a friend, an amazing friend who works in publishing. And she was like, you fight so much for representation in TV and film. Have you ever thought about writing a book? Because there's a real need for diversity in books for young people. And I was like, you're crazy. Like being an author sounds like it's a really hard thing to do and really terrifying. And no. But she sent me home with a list of middle grade and YA books. And in 2016, I still couldn't find a middle grade book that reflected my experience. And so I thought, wow, if no one's going to write it, maybe I should try to do this. Um, and so I did, and that first book became the best at it, and which we can hold up again. And it did all right in the world. It won the Stonewall honor, and it's fictional, but I like to say it's semi-autobiographical. It's a lot of my own story. It's a story that I needed when I was 12 and couldn't find at 12 and still couldn't find decades later. And so, yeah, that's kind of the journey to becoming a writer.
Well, talk a little bit about the transition or the similarities, I guess, between acting and assuming a character acting, and then assuming a character as a writer. There are many people in our audiences who do both or who work in improv who combine those skills.
I don't know how everybody else writes. I'm certainly friends with a lot of authors now, and we talk about the process. But for me, there is an embodying of each character, and so when I'm writing an emotional scene, I'm kind of going through it. Like I start to feel it, I cry when the character cries, and it can be exhausting, honestly, like to carry so many uh, characters kind of inside your body. But it's the only way I really know how to write. And I think that comes from that acting background of like, you kind of have to fully embody it to really make it come alive, both on the screen or on a stage, but also I think for me when I'm writing on the page, I'm very conscious of like what is the character's need and do we believe that they would actually do this thing to pursue it? And if we don't believe it, then what are the consequences of the fact that they've stepped so far out of their zone? So that approach for me is kind of very present in the way I write, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. What I'm curious about is the character in The Best at It. So he's 12, and 12 is right at the cusp. We in the children's book field, we have that 8 to 12-year-old sort of, that's the central sort of market. So now you're dealing with delicate issues. You're dealing with a coming of age with a kid who has feelings about his own sexuality that he's not quite sure of. You're dealing with bullying, certainly, and a culture that is unwilling to accept this child who feels different. How did you how did you approach that? How careful were you, or did you want to be? And what's been the kickback?
The thing that happens in that book that didn't happen for me for a lot longer was I didn't have the language to say the words "I'm gay" until much later in life. I didn't know anyone around me who was openly gay, and the only thing that I knew about that was that there were jokes being made about gay people on TV, on the radio. I remember being in carpool at the age of 12, Rahul's age in the book, and hearing a joke on the radio that was like something like, "Oh, they should just take all those gay people and ship them off to an island." And the punchline was, "Oh, they already have. It's called Manhattan." And I, of course, live in New York City, in New York City now, ironically, but the intense shame that I felt sitting in that back of the car with peers of mine in school, thinking like, "Oh, some instinctual part of me knew at that age, they're talking about me." even though I didn't even fully know that about myself. And they want to ship me off to an island because I don't belong. And so it was important to me when I was writing that book to give that character the language that I didn't have, for him to be able to understand the world and be able to say the words, I'm gay. Because I think part of the great, I'm very happy with my life. I love my life. I feel like it's been a very, really good one. But the journey of pain was not being able to know that about myself, heal around it, and accept myself for who I am until many, many, many years later. I didn't come out to really anyone until my mid 20s, not even to really myself. I was kind of like fighting it. And so, speaking about your earlier question of like being the actor and how that impacts the writing, I recorded the audiobook of The Best at It. And when I recorded the audiobook of The Best at It, and he gets to say those words at the age of 12, it was really emotional. Like I had to I had to take a beat and leave the booth and come back in. And that's what I want to give kids. I want them to know like it's okay to have this language. It's okay to understand yourself. It's okay to share it with someone else. And so in The Best at It, there's a very aspirational quality to the world around him, which is something that I think I was different in my second novel, in Nikhil Out Loud. Uh, I wanted Rahul to be met with a lot of love when he has the courage to make that decision, because I do think as children's book writers, we get to offer young people a vision of a world that is perhaps better than the actual world they live in, that we can write it into reality. So to your second part of that question, like I was careful in giving him truth in language. So in The Best at It, there's a very aspirational quality to the world around him, which is something that I think I was different in my second novel, in Nikhil Out Loud. Uh, I wanted Rahul to be met with a lot of love when he has the courage to make that decision, because I do think as children's book writers, we get to offer young people a vision of a world that is perhaps better than the actual world they live in, that we can write it into reality. So to your second part of that question, like I was careful in, I think I was careful in giving him truth in language. And then I know that you asked about the pushback. I want to make sure, like, I don't know if you wanted to ask a follow-up question, or I'm happy to jump right into that. Yeah.
We both know what it is, so.
Yeah, I can jump right into that. Like
Go.
19 on book tour with The Best at It, kind of before this coordinated attack on books was happening. But obviously, books were being banned and people were being censored way before that. On 2019, on book tour with that book, I went to a middle school with 700 kids in the audience, the entire middle school, a public school in Ohio. We had an amazing authors visit. I asked this question. I said, Rahul in the book feels different just for being brown and for maybe being gay. Have any of you felt different? And this kid raises his hand, a white kid, and I call on him and he takes off his baseball cap and he's bald. And he says, I have alopecia. And so I don't have hair. And sometimes kids make fun of me. And I was like, this is the power of books. Like, this is empathy happening right here in the space and also in front of 700 of this kid's peers, right? 3 days later, a group of parents got angry that an openly gay author had come to talk about a book with a gay character. And they tried to shut down school assemblies. And at that school, there was a lot of blowback. Kids from that school started messaging me on social media saying, we love that you were here. How do we stop this? And I was like, I can't, I can't DM with 12-year-olds. But it inspired my second book. It inspired Nikhil Out Loud, which is about a kid finding his voice and speaking up for what he believes in. And I will just say that in the last several years, from 2019 to now, The Best at It, I'd consider that maybe like a soft banning, that initial incident. It's been fully banned in places around the country. And I would say most recently, a school in Pennsylvania tried to ban me from coming to visit them. And it got national, and I would say even international attention. And the community around that school in Pennsylvania fought back, and they forced a school board who tried to ban me to reconvene, and 1,000 people showed up at the school board meeting and fought to have me there, and I got to do the school visit. And so I think that's, the power of community, and maybe a lesson to what we need to be doing at this time, in standing up for each other.
I love that as your sort of final story, because this special is called Changemakers, and many of us feel sort of unable to affect real change. And what happened after the Ali Belshi appearance, I think it was, is that became a very public uh, uh, occurrence and a very public cause, and it gave parents and children and communities the opportunity to express their view and really affect change for a lot of people. It's very easy in a world where so much is wrong to say, what can I do? I'm just a person, or even worse, I'm just a kid. And so to actually turn some kind of decision-making power into the community hands was was really powerful. And I just want everyone watching it to know about that story and to see what happened, so that you can understand that whether it's through your writing, your illustration, your publishing, or even just your voice as a member of the community, you can make things happen that make a big difference to
With
people.
all the blowback that's happening, with this idea that like perhaps stories will be squashed before they even get to be told. Uh, I have these real fears around how is our work going to find its way into the world, And I will just say this, that I think it's so important at times like this to just keep making the work, and to trust that it will find its place. And if you have a story to tell, be sure to tell it.
So listen, would you be offended if I said I just love you?
Oh my gosh, no, I love you back.
Okay. Next time you're here in California, come and we'll have a coffee on Larchmont. And thank you for doing this really important work along with your other acting career. It's crucial, and you've affected so many people, including the thousands of people who are watching today. So it's been great talking to you, and I'm going to go stoke the fire and see if I can get it flamed a little bit. Thank
Thank
you, Maulik. It's a pleasure.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you, Lynn and Malik, for that beautiful, thoughtful conversation. I am here to present our first raffle winner for The Best at It by Malik Pancholy. And I am so pleased to announce that Joy Ufamadu is our winner for The Best at It. So, Joy, I will be reaching out to you so we can send you this amazing book. Thank you so much.
One of the new programs that the Impact and Legacy Fund is launching is called Let's Eat, and the subtitle is Food, Culture, and Books. And for this program, we have selected 9 picture books that are all about food. And we're doing a program, we're providing these to schools, we're providing a program guide and curriculum guide, and each one of the authors and or illustrators is doing a live video illustration of the food that they've written about. So we thought we should ignore you just because you're adults. This shouldn't only be children. So we have asked one of the creators of one of these books, the wonderful Winsome Bingham, to demonstrate a recipe from her book Soul Food Sunday, which she is about to do. So you're going to have a lot of fun with her. And after you've watched this, think about how this is going to apply to schools, that lots of schools are going to get copies of Let's Eat. And I just want to thank Phil Rosenthal, who is the creator of Everybody Loves Raymond, and also Feed Phil, who has supplied the generous grant that is allowing us to create this wonderful program that teaches kids how food is a celebration and it crosses all cultures. So thank you and enjoy. Don't eat too much.
So I'm Winsome Bingham. I'm the author of Soul Food Sunday and the author of the follow-up Fish Fry Friday, which comes out this year. So today I'm going to make a honey drizzled Brussels sprout. As a kid, I did not like Brussels sprout. But as my son got older, well, 4 and 5, he didn't like it either. But when he was like 4 or 5, I started loving Brussels sprouts. And I needed to find a compromise because he needs to eat what I eat. So I had to play around with recipe until I finally got it right. This is his favorite recipe. He loved it, loved it, loved it. And so today I'm going to show you what I'm making. So first, we have Brussels sprouts. And all I have right now, I have these Brussels sprouts. They're soaking in lemon juice and vinegar, because that's how I clean my greens. We can't have grainy greens. I also have bell peppers. And if you know anything about me and bell peppers, orange, my favorite. It's so delicious, like I just eat it like, I love it. We're gonna use bacon. We need an onion. And I love seasoned foods. So let's get into it. So now that I have my Brussels sprouts, I'm gonna drain it. So now we take the Brussels sprouts and we dump them in a bowl. Now, our bell peppers and our onions. I already chopped some up for you. Here are the onions. I'm putting it in, and remember what I said. Oh, delicious. Fish up in it. So here we have the red, the yellow, the orange Brussels sprout, and our onions. Okay. Now, in the skillet, I always spray my skillet because I don't want it to stick. I'm gonna add some bacon at the bottom. Bacon makes everything taste good. It's so delicious. Okay, there's our bacon. This is my favorite part. So we drizzle olive oil, just a little bit. I'm not a measurer, but I should be. But I just listen for the ancestors to tell me what I should be doing and how I should do it. Garlic makes everything. Oh, I just love that aroma. Garlic. Everything tastes. Now we're seasoning. We're gonna have some onion powder, paprika for color. My son started calling these rainbow Brussels sprout, by the way, because of all the bell peppers and the flavor and the color of it. But sometimes we use purple onion. These are the best seasoning. This is Kinder's, and it's an all-purpose. It's so flavorful. It has everything in it, and we really don't need a lot of seasoning, but I just love seasoning food. I love flavor. I just love flavor. Adobo, Italian seasoning. Even though I have fresh garlic, there's something about garlic powder blended with paprika and onion powder. So I just have to do it. This is my new secret. It's called Moromi. It's a ginger soy sauce, and it's amazing. It just elevates the flavor of my food. We're gonna drizzle. Oh, look at that. Oh, so tasty. Oh, honey. We will stir it up and get, oh, it smells so good. That ginger mixed in with that beautiful honey. Oh, and then we just put it in with our bacon. We layered it in our pot. Look at those colors blending out. Yellow, red, green, white. You can use purple cabbage, slaw on top to get some more rainbow color, as my son used to call them, the rainbow Brussels sprout, the rainbow Brussels sprout. And here we have it. So then I love to roast it in the oven, right? So we put it in the oven. I'm cooking it today for this. Normally I let it roast on 375, but today I put it on 400. So it cook 30 minutes. And it's so tasty. And I'll use my Soul Food Sunday spoon that my editor gave me. And look at that. Look at that bacon and look at the, so good. And now look how soft it is. And look at the steam and oh my God. So good. So good. So good. I don't know what else to tell you. Mic drop. I gotta do it, y'all. I gotta do a fork drop. It's a done. So for those of you familiar with Soul Food Sunday, that's basically what it is. It's a book about a family, about a little boy coming of age, and his grandmother teaches him to cook soul food. And when we cook, cooking is long and it's tedious, but when people love you, they do it anyway. And this was his thing of learning, like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Because in the book, he just kept saying, my hands hurt, my arm aches, but I don't quit. Because he knew he needed to contribute something beautiful. And that's just what he did at the end. He created his own version and added to the Sunday feast, and it was amazing. I appreciate y'all coming to visit, but I can't let my Brussels sprouts get cold. I got to eat it. So I tell you what, thank you for coming, and you have a wonderful day. Don't forget, Brussels sprouts. Bye.
For our second raffle for the spectacular Soul Food Sunday by Winsome, and thank you, Winsome, for such a wonderful cooking demonstration. That was really beautiful, is Roxanne Ortiz. So Roxanne, I will be reaching out to you, and congratulations for the winning Soul Food Sunday. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Lynn Oliver again, and I'm here with our keynote interview. And it's a real treat to introduce you to the writing team of Ann Brashares and Ben Brashares. You may know Ann as the author of The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. If you don't know her from that, then I think you maybe have been living in a cave for the last 20 years, because those books have sold over 10 million copies and have been translated into every possible form, and they're brilliant. And they affected tremendous change in the children's book field to create something that had so much power and so much community support. Meanwhile, younger brother Ben has been laboring in the picture book field. The picture book that he's very fond of is the great Whipplethorpe Bug Collection. And we've invited them here with us tonight because they are working on a new trilogy, collaborating together. And so we want to hear about it. It's very much about change. It very much reflects the theme of tonight's program, which is how we as children's book creators can create change and deal with interesting and complicated topics. So now let's take a minute to sort of drill into the topic and what the topic represents to you here in this year of 2025. So Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants was not only a phenomenal success, but sort of filled the hearts and minds of especially teen and tween girls for a decade. And it's full of love and friendship and all the things that audience craves. And that, in addition to a really unique premise, I think is responsible for its success. Those girls were not just friends with each other, but friends with all of their readers. Now here we are some years later, and what you've chosen to write is an alternate history.
We didn't start out with the idea of an alternate world. Exactly. We started out with the idea of this radio, and it's a kind of an amateur radio, nothing much to look at, very low tech, but somehow it manages to connect these two groups of kids together. And so they talk, they realize they live in the same town, on the same street, and they go to find each other in a local park, and they can't find each other. And the reason they can is because though they live in the same place, they live almost 80 years apart in time. Two groups of kids, a radio that's connecting them through time. And so we thought, all right, we know we want one group of kids to be contemporary. And then we thought, where in history and time do we want to set the other group? And so we went through different ideas, some different options, but our first and favorite was the 1940s. And most importantly, we have the backdrop of World War II, which is incredibly consequential and offered us, the opportunity for the kids to communicate about it and to really make a mess of things.
So I just would like to point out, so when they find this radio, it takes them back 80 years, and now they can communicate with kids who were alive during World War II or pre-World War II. What's interesting, I'm interested to hear why you chose it. I have a feeling there's probably more to it than that. I mean, they could have gone back to ancient Egypt. They could have gone back to the time of the French Revolution. But what you chose was a time in history when Nazism, anti-Semitism, fascism were at their height. Was that part of your consideration? Was that part of what you're trying to communicate to kids, or it was just a good plot device?
It's a period when the sort of moral story is kind of terrifying, but has more clarity in some ways. People talk about it as like the last just war or something like that, if you can ever describe any wars that way. But, a sense of like, yes, a real sort of darkness and shadow, in Nazism in Germany, and fascism, and sort of terrifying and dramatic, and again opens an opportunity for these kids who are beginning to sort of understand the outside world better and beginning to understand a sense of sort of power in the world, find themselves in a position to change history.
And while this isn't a historical novel in the true sense of re-examining history, it is an alternate history. Just for those of you who haven't read the book yet, and go get it quickly, it supposes, the proposition is, what would have happened if the United States and the Allies had lost World War II? What would a Nazi America be like? That's a very big question for a 12-year-old to consider. So did you, that's underneath the plot, which is, by the way, very heart-pounding and very exciting and very fun to read. But that big question, our interview is called Asking the Big Questions. That big question is underneath it all. And I wonder how you feel about that, how you handled it, if that was part of your outlining and writing process.
Okay, so yes, we have this counterfactual history. The book starts and it's, contemporary America as we know it. And then information passes between the kids about the landing locations of D-Day specifically, and it results in the changed outcome of the war. So the Allies lose, D-Day is a disaster, the Allies ultimately lose the war. It's a sort of drawn out process, and we've written a kind of a whole history from 1944 up until the present of this sort of new history, which is not America as we know it, but essentially a colony. America has become a colony of Nazi Germany, and it's called Westfallen. I have this opportunity to compare, we were talking about comparing, kids today versus kids in the 40s. Well, the second and kind of bigger comparison in this book is really America as we know it and Westfallen. And I think originally, the easy part of it is thinking about the differences. In Westfallen, the lack of freedom, the incredible racism and prejudice, people being, marginalized and brutalized, and, everything about, there's so many things about Westfallen that you can kind of draw in stark contours. And so that was really interesting and really compelling and really, took up a lot of thought and time. It's the differences between America and Westfallen that are interesting, but it's the similarities in a way that have become more and more absorbing as writers and in the story. It's like these places are not as different as we wish they were. And how often are the seeds of Westfallen, evident in 1940s America, but also in contemporary America. So many, we say sort of holding up a mirror to it. There's so many ways in which Westfallen is sort of uncomfortably, eerily similar to, connected to contemporary America. And that's become, I would say, more so in the time even since we started writing it.
Well, first of all, we knew we had something that felt somewhat political in nature, right? We're talking about war, we're talking about Nazism, fascism. So we have something that's pretty heavy on the outset. And so I think part of trying to get the entertaining part, not get drowned out by the heaviness of that was really, well, that's where my stunted growth comes in with my fart jokes and, all that, like, having a 12-year-old who I can follow around and but I think a lot of it is trying to figure out where there's humor and not trying to have silliness that feels really out of place in such a kind of serious setting, but humor that is derived from, hardship, the sort of that idea of, tragedy plus time equals comedy. And this was sort of like not quite enough time to pass for the comedy, but we felt like to make it feel realistic, you would have kids that needed to feel a connection with each other and banter with each other in a way that they used to before the timeline changed, or feel a sense of comfort in, talking about pop culture and what they wish they wished they'd studied history a little more so that they'd have some answers here, or poking fun at the 44 kids poking fun at the 2023 kids for having phones they stare at all day and not understanding that, or something called Google. That's the craziest thing that they can come up with as their invention, all these fun things, and not having jetpacks and not having, all these things that the 44 kids really wanted to have. So there's all the possibilities for entertainment, I think, in there that we felt were just endless. I mean, there's just so much there that can also go alongside with the heartbreaking story of a Jewish kid who wakes up in fascist America where Jews are, persecuted, and, more so than now in our current world. And the threat of that. And there's extremely dark stuff. But I do feel like in order to carry that dark stuff, you have to have the light as well.
What would you think, Anne? This is for you. So your audience from Traveling Pants, which still exists, but the initial sort of crazed audience, what do you think they were looking for in those books that the audience for Westfallen might or might not be looking for?
It's an interesting question, and it's funny because the books are very different in tone, and I think, Westfallen is for somewhat younger readers. I think there could certainly be overlap, and Traveling Pants is, young adult. But it's funny because the process kind of started the same way, which is to say, kind of a single tangible object that opened up the possibility of kind of elevated experience. So with the Traveling Pants, it was a pair of pants. And it sort of did open up worlds for these four girls, these characters. But in a way, pants is sort of a somewhat intimate item, particularly shared by four girls. And so, sort of conducive to intimate stories and more kind of inward looking stories about, kind of identity and coming of age and relationships to one another and love, romantic love, unconditional love, and friendship. And these are sort of some of the universal themes of YA, I think. Whereas with middle grade, and starting with the radio, which is of course more outwardly focused, and characters sort of much more focused on their adventures in the outer world, and again kind of finding their power, which these characters do in a big way. So I would say that the scale of sisterhood and the pants, again, more sort of intimate stories, and this is a bigger sort of world impacting adventure, but both both books, both sets of characters, it's like the beating heart of the books are the characters and their relationships to one another. And to kind of amplify or keep going with some of the things that Ben was saying, about the humor, and that for these kids, even in Westfallen, like we try very, very hard to see it through their eyes, and have it be so so intimate and real to them, and and yet they're still the age they are, with the sort of sensibility and the sense of humor. And anyway, I think both the books, again, more sort of inward looking, more outward looking, but both series very much about relationships and friendship and connection.
Do you find in going out and talking to kids about this that they're different, or there's a lot of talk and writing about how kids are more anxious, more worried, that social media has made their woes 24-hour woes instead of just sort of limited to school. When you go out and you see that, what is it you see, and do you feel like your books play a role in that? Ben, we could start with you on that, also as a parent of children.
Yeah, I mean, one of the characters, one of the main characters that we wrote, that I was sort of more in charge of drafting the initial go around with, is Henry, who deals with a lot of anxiety, and that was written from a place of knowing all of that myself, and sort of biographical in a lot of ways. And one of the things that we found really interesting was this idea of, like, how would someone with a lot of anxiety react to waking up in a horrible, scary place? It's not just like a regular kid waking up to Nazi America, but it's a kid who's already got a lot of anxiety. But I think in terms of kids now, we were definitely interested in the idea of mental health, how kids in modern times are dealing with bigger mental health issues than kids in 44 were, whereas the war helped that, right? It was like everything was right in front of you. It's action. You had to go, and Lawrence is collecting his scrap metal, and there was danger that was very real around World War II. And they call that the total war because it was like civilians were involved in it, and it pervaded every inch of life in America. And whereas now, some people have made the kind of observation that we need a war or something for people to get their minds off themselves, or kids to kind of have a sense of purpose or something. And it's kind of a ridiculous statement, but in some way, I think there's a little bit of truth to it, where I feel like, with social media, this is sort of a little bit of a tangent, but sort of related, but I feel like kids now are just so, they're bored and overwhelmed all at once. And there's like this sense that there's not enough to do, but the screens keep them super entertained in the short term. And then they take their eyes off the screen, and life seems pretty boring in comparison. So I feel like there's just that constant battle of overwhelm and boredom, and social media as well. Our father, who hope this isn't like outing him too much or too personal, but he is in AA and has been for the last 40 years or something. No, 30 years. And anyway, he once told me the concept of of in AA, how you're meant to not try to work on not comparing your insides to other people's outsides. And I feel like social media really is just the ultimate vehicle for that for kids. Is just you've got your inside world, and and you're comparing it to everyone else's cultivated outside worlds. And as we know, there's like nothing more lonesome than feeling lonely when you're with other people. It's way preferable to be alone and feel lonesome, because it doesn't feel like I don't. So I feel like social media is a place where people are feeling lonely surrounded by people, and that's the worst kind of loneliness, I think.
Fiction enables you to read somebody else's insides, to open a book and not see how a person looks, but how they feel. It's the only way really you can get access to somebody else's inner workings, inner mind, fears, uncertainties. And so it's sort of, in a way, the opposite of it. It's getting to, sort of commune with another person's insides when you read a book.
The most powerful way that books make change is to put the reader in touch with the interior life of another character, so that you can feel you're not alone, and you can do that in a very authentic and private way. And I think privacy is key to this. You might be able to do it on social media, but it's all very public. Is there anything that you would like to say to the audience of people? The people watching this are people who are some illustrators, some people who are writer illustrators, the lucky ones who have both sides of their brains working, and many, many, many writers who are working on everything from picture book through YA novels, and trying to address the contemporary ethos, and which I think you've done so beautifully in this book. Is there anything you would like to give in terms of sort of counsel, advice, or process that you think would be helpful for people who are struggling through this moment of can I say conception?
So much of being a writer is just struggling through, every page and every scene. And I think that's just the nature of it. It's always, I think if you're really trying, it's kind of always hard, and you're just always making it up, and it never gets easy, and you never really get to coast. And that's probably, as it should be.
The field that we've chosen is a change-making field, not only as a writer, but as a writer for young people.
Yeah, I think it's true that you have the power to really inform the way kids think, and hopefully kind of expand or deepen, the way they look at themselves and their lives. They say that people who read fiction, and I'm sure it's, most critical for young readers, it increases compassion and sympathy. It enables you to inhabit, as we talked about, somebody else's mind from the inside, somebody else's life and circumstances, and to feel sort of connected to them. And so I think that, yes, we have an immense power to affect the lives of some young people, again, from the inside, in the deep ways. But that's a big job, right? And making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches feels a lot easier most days. And I completely agree with you there. It's sometimes, hard to sort of take that, sense of potential power and responsibility and, face the empty page.
The first book in the trilogy is Westfallen by Ann and Ben Brashares. And it's a wonderful book. We'll look forward to September for the second one. And my applause to you for kind of jumping genres, and for being willing to tackle what are big and difficult questions, and do it with your trademark sort of humor and pace, but also leave it very clear to the reader that there is plenty of material in here to be thought about, to be discussed, and that is life-changing and can really change the way we're living now in this 21st century. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for participating, and thank you for making change in this world that needs a lot of changes. So it was my great pleasure to get to talk to you.
Lynn, thank you so much for inviting us to do it. And it's been such a nice experience to talk to you and hear your thoughts and your questions.
Thank you for these books, and thank you for appearing. And we'll see you in the aisles of the bookstore.
Thank you, Ann and Ben. We're going to be raffling off Westfallen by Ann and Ben Brashares. And that raffle winner is Marianne Blackstone Tabner. So congratulations, Marianne. You'll be getting Westfallen by Ann and Ben Brashares in the mail.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christine Emron, Director of the Youth Free Expression Program at the National Coalition Against Censorship. It is such a joy to be here today to celebrate an extraordinary collaboration, one that empowers young voices and champions one of our most fundamental rights, the freedom to read, write, and speak freely. This event marks the powerful partnership between the National Coalition Against Censorship, NCAC, and the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators Impact and Legacy Fund. Together, we are working to protect the freedom of thought and creative expression, not just for writers and artists, but for everyone, especially young people like ones we're celebrating today. The SCBWI Impact and Legacy Fund has joined NCAC's Student Advocates for Speech program, helping students across the country become informed, passionate defenders of free expression in their schools, their communities, and beyond. These young advocates are learning to fight for their own right to read, and equally important, to defend the voices of others, including those they may not agree with. We ask students to reflect on two big, bold prompts. Number one, why a specific banned book matters to you. Or number two, how the right to read has impacted your life. We encourage them to get personal, to explore how books have shaped their identities, opened their minds, or even created a bridge between generations. And the creativity that came out of this project was nothing short of inspiring. From essays to poems to powerful personal narratives, these young writers showed us exactly why the right to read matters now more than ever. Today, we are proud to highlight 3 incredible students whose creative submissions rose to the top. These students were selected to be featured in this year's Children's Book Changemakers special, presented by the SCBWI Impact and Legacy Fund, a program designed to spotlight those children's books to change the world. Let's meet our selected student changemakers.
Hi, my name is Mariama Diallo, and I'm a junior from Chicago, Illinois. I wrote this poem with the help of the Student Advocates for Speech program at the National Coalition Against Censorship, alongside the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators. Stories within stories within stories. Folded, cocooned, waiting for someone to care, someone to peel the layers and uncover the story within a story within a story. Too many to count, too many to read, too many to hear. Stories within stories within stories. My mother's story wrapped within her mother's story and her mother's story. Never ending, no discernible beginning. Tangled, knotted, frayed, and worn is my family's story within a story within a story. Written in love, in tears, in whispers and shouts, glances and sighs. With my ears, my eyes, no need for pen upon paper to write a story within a story within a story. Torn pages, creased spines, stained covers, each one well loved, well lived, each one deserving of a moment in the sun. Imperfect romances, devastating tragedies, words left unsaid, preserved carefully in our stories within a story within stories.
My name is Iris. I'm from Florida and I'm a graduating senior who has a lot of thoughts about public education. I'm a student advocate for free speech leader, and this is an essay I wrote with support from the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. As far-right conservatives in the media go on about what the White House labels radical indoctrination and anti-American ideologies in public education, I observe quite the opposite. The teaching of AP American history in Florida high schools is guided by a neoliberal ideology that silences perspectives on certain topics, like socialism and communism, making it far from objective. The APUSH textbook features a narrow description of the Black Panther Party and a knee-jerk anti-communist view of the Cold War. In both cases, definitions are left out, leaving students who have pre-existing prejudices about radicalism and socialism in exactly the same place they were when they first walked into the classroom. The textbook that my teacher assigns contains a singular mention of the Black Panther Party and its 800-plus pages. In 1966, the Black Panthers were organized by Huey Newton, Bobby Seale, and other militants as a revolutionary socialist movement advocating self-rule for Black Americans, end quote. No mention of free lunch programs, the Oakland Community School, or the practice of comrades reciting the Bill of Rights during police run-ins. Free lunch programs seem especially significant since they inspired the government to implement free breakfast in public schools today. Whether or not students agree with the radical ideas fundamental to the movement, the community grassroots organizing created by the Black Panther Party provides an immeasurably important historical lesson. APUSH also withholds information about the Cold War, which is defined as an ideological conflict between communist USSR and democratic US. Despite mentioning communism and communists over 150 times, the APUSH textbook never defines the term. Furthermore, my classmates recognize the simple dichotomic characterization of the Soviet Union and the United States portrayed by the curriculum. When asked if they observed a good guy and a bad guy, all 7 students recognized the USSR as villain and US as hero. For a textbook that claims objectivity and college-level complexity, it seems drastically irresponsible to feed students such a simplistic narrative of a 45-year-long global historical development. Regardless of political stance, educators must recognize the danger of disregarding crucial definitions and painting broad brushstrokes over deeply nuanced subjects. We must follow 2 paths towards change. 1, heal public education through political action, and 2, seek knowledge outside of institutions and inside communities, whether it be through books, freedom schools, or good old-fashioned conversations.
My name is Bryce McCaig. I'm from San Diego, California. I'm with the National Coalition Against Censorship. I wrote this story with the support of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. The title is Windows to Wonder. Lily stumbled upon 3 curious objects behind her favorite books. They were tiny little frames, each with a scene. They stood upright on the back wall like small picture frames, doors, magic portals to a new world. As she leaned closer to take a look, she noticed how one frame had vines covering the door. Another depicted a tiny city skyline under a double moon, and the third swirl was shimmering stardust. Each frame had a tiny, inviting handle. Lily stared puzzled. What are they? She murmured to her teddy bear. Are they fancy pictures, secret doors, or something else entirely? She felt a little thrill mixed with fear as she squeezed the teddy bear's paws, took a deep breath, and looked at her teddy bear and said, "I'll be brave if you're brave." Taking a small breath, Lily gently turned the handle on the vine-covered frame. It swung open without a sound. She peered inside, but at a stunning scene. Giant trees stood dark against a clouded sky, and the air echoed with the faint calls of strange birds. She looked at her teddy bear and smiled. It felt wild and full of life. In the distance, shadows of humans dashed by, barely noticeable as they were camouflaged within the foliage. Next, feeling a bit braver, she opened the city skyline frame. The view here was very different. Sleek, tall buildings, all the same shape and color, a smooth, plain gray, reached towards the twin moon. Below, tiny figures walked in perfect lines on a straight pathway, all dressed in identical gray clothes. The city was hushed, neat, and strangely uniform. One of the people who appeared to be a little girl looked up at the sky, peered directly at Lily. "I wonder if she's looking at me," she asked her teddy bear. Lily quickly shut the door. Finally, Lily turned the handle on the stardust frame. Wow! Her eyes opened wide to a breathtaking sky filled with stars and streaks of colors. Silent comets zipped past, leaving light trails, distant planets drifting peacefully, and colorful clouds of space dust bloomed like giant flowers. In the background, a splendid nebula appeared to go on forever. It was endless, quiet, and beautiful. Both she and her bear sat staring in wonder at the stars above. Lily's nervousness faded, replaced with wide-eyed wonder. These frames were gateways, each revealing a completely different world, some vibrant and others vast and mysterious. Exploring new things, whether peeking through these frames or opening the cover of a book, might show her worlds unlike her own. But seeing these different places wasn't scary, it was exciting. She pulled a book from her shelf and imagined herself in the world as she read the story to her teddy bear. Thank you.
Thank you very much to these three outstanding young people. When you hear words like this and thoughts like this, it gives us all hope for the future that we see leadership emerging in the area of freedom to read and freedom of expression. So thank you, students, and also thank you to the National Coalition Against Censorship, who does great work in the area of freedom of expression. And so now we're going to segue to a very exciting part of our program, which is the presentation of the Impact and Legacy Fund Awards. So be prepared to be surprised for one and not surprised for the other. But I think you're going to really enjoy seeing the awards that are given and hearing from the recipients. So let's take it away, and congratulations to all the recipients who have won these awards.
Hi. The Charlotte and Wilbur Award for Compassion for Animals was created by me and the Society of Children's Books Impact and Legacy Fund to honor a children's book that fosters care and respect for animals that share our planet, sparks empathy and compassion in its readers, and offers hope and perhaps pathways to advocacy. As I've mentioned in the past, the award's name is a tribute to E.B. White's Charlotte's Web, which raised my 8-year-old's awareness to the wonderment of animals. It gives me great pleasure to announce the second year of awards for the Charlotte and Wilbur Award for Compassion for Animals. This year's honor book goes to Pal, the last song of the Kauai O'o, written by Tony Piedra and illustrated by Mackenzie Joy. Sadly, the haunting song of this small Hawaiian dark-colored bird, native to the island of Kauai, is no more. Its song has not been heard since 1987, and the Kauai O'o is considered extinct. Told in a moving, lyrical voice with lush illustrations, Pa, which means finished, ended, all done in Hawaiian, brings an awareness to its readers of the preciousness of every living creature and the vital need of our stewardship to ensure their protection and survival. To take a line from the back matter, by observing we can remember, by remembering we can learn, by learning we can change the nature of our impact. Congratulations to Tony and Mackenzie for the creation of this important book for young readers, which leads me to the introduction of the winner of this year's Charlotte and Wilbur Award for Compassion for Animals. Congratulations go to Erica Silverman, the author, and Ginny Sue, the illustrator, for The City Sings Green and other poems about welcoming wildlife, a children's picture book that gives us hope. A central concept in the Jewish religion is tikkun olam, which translates to repairing the world. The City Sings Green effectively shows through wonderful poetry and paintings that worldwide caring humans are doing just that, repairing the world, cleaning up the earth, rivers, beaches, cities, so songbirds, bees, owls, penguins and possums, beavers and butterflies, otters and turtles can have clean and healthy environments to make their home. When at times problems of habitat loss, invasive species, poaching, and its effect on wildlife seem frustrating, even overwhelming, the poems and art inspire us through the true stories they relate. We can all work together to repair the world, stop the extinctions, care enough to save our wildlife. The back matter provides ways to help and resources for families and educators. inspiring readers who choose to be advocates for helping wildlife. Congratulations to Erica and Ginny for creating The City Sings Green, which gives us all inspiration and hope.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Karen, and all the members of the Charlotte and Wilbur Committee for the hours of work that you put into reading and talking and deliberating. And thank you to the members of the Impact and Legacy Committee for making that important connection between making good books and making the world a better place. And thank you to SCBWI, which I joined in, oh my God, all the way back in 1982 and changed my life then and just continues to change my life in such magical ways. Thank you. What could be better than an award named after a famous spider and a famous pig? And a famous friendship, perhaps the most famous friendship in children's literature, and an award named for compassion for animals. I am so honored. I am a flutter and afloat. So thank you. The book was born in the fact that I am a born and bred city dweller. I grew up in New York. I moved to Los Angeles. I love cities, but I also love animals. I love wildlife. And I started becoming increasingly and painfully aware of how bad cities are for our wild creatures. We are not kind to them. And the more my eyes opened, the more I wanted to do and learn about what we could do to make cities better places for wildlife. I started in my own garden, creating a habitat garden with California native plants, and I saw the incredible results of that. I saw bees returning, worms returning to our soil that had been bereft of worms. I saw hummingbirds coming to our hummingbird sage and rabbits hiding in our bushes, and none of that had happened before. It was really the magic of habitat restoration. But I wanted to do more and I wanted to know what was going on around the world. So I started researching. And what I found was so encouraging and amazing. Stories of my favorite personal story, because it goes back to my hometown of New York. People for decades were cleaning up a total dump mess of a Bronx River. And the end result, after 200 years of the beavers being gone from that area, a beaver returned to the Bronx River. And it literally made me cry reading that. And reading about otters coming back to Singapore, the most modern city you can imagine. And here in Los Angeles, blue butterflies that were near extinction, right in the shadow of the Los Angeles International Airport, people found a small grove of these blue butterflies and they've started restoring their habitat and they are coming back. Story after story just filled me with hope, and I found that I was bursting with the desire to tell these stories. And I started out with thinking I'll write a narrative nonfiction, like a little chapter book, but it kept bursting into song. It kept wanting to be poetry, and I was kind of resistant to that. Poetry is a hard sell, let's face it. A lot of people think, oh, poetry. I don't like poetry, but I love poetry, and this book just had to be. It just wanted to celebrate these stories in song, and so I started working on it. And when I found an editor and writer initially, and then Kate O'Sullivan came on board, they helped me shape it into the book that it became. And then the incredible artist Ginny Sue clearly brought her heart and her soul to this incredible art that is just intricately detailed and bursting with life and color and light, and puts magic to my words. It was a labor of love for me. It was a labor of love for her, clearly, and I think for the editors who were involved in it. And so I also want to say, there's a big back matter section. I could hardly contain myself with the back matter. It could have gone on for pages more, but I wanted to provide the resources so that children and adults and educators could carry on the work that we all need to be doing to save our wildlife and save our cities and say, make the cities better places for wildlife, which, by the way, makes it healthier for all of us. So when wildlife thrives, people thrive too, despite some of the conflicts that sometimes come up, admittedly. So I hope that this book will inspire generations to keep doing the work that needs to be done, and to know that it's possible, it's doable, it works. We can rewild our cities, and we can celebrate that together. So thank you so much to the Charlotte and Wilbur Committee and to SCBWI for honoring my book. I am so grateful.
I am just delighted to be presenting you with the Russell Freedman Award for Nonfiction for a Better World. You know, Freedman was like the gold standard, I think, for producing gorgeous, important works of nonfiction for kids. And you are carrying on that legacy and then some with this, with Coming Home, you know, with the book that is history that we need, you know, in the US, like really, especially at this time, but also just like just such a personal and loving story about your grandfather, that I'm just so proud to have you know, worked on, that we're so proud to have published. So congratulations on the Russell Freedman Award, my friend. I'm so happy for you. I was looking back, and you know, I think we actually first started talking together like in 2020, and then, you know, for this book, right, like just for this to be the result, I think it's just more incredible than I could have even dreamed. I love how like reciprocal it feels, right? Like how much you were inspired by your, you know, obviously like your family and the people who came before you, and then like, you know, carrying on that teaching thing, like how you've carried that on, right, to your own children and students, and then even just like the translator, right, that we brought in to do the book in Hopi,
Yes.
you know, having it be Marilyn, like a friend and colleague of yours. Anyway, just thank you so much for like entrusting us at LQ with this book and the story of your grandfather and his experience, you know, at the boarding schools, and
Thank you very much, Nick. I really appreciate it. First off, this is a family history and only one person's experience and journey. And once it started, you know, coming to completion, working on the pieces, working on the artwork, I had a real strong emotional connection to it. You know, I cried a few times finishing the pieces because it really did hit to the center of my emotions on how the experience affected not only my grandparents and the generations before me, but you know, even where I am now, and the things that I've been able to experience and accomplish and visit places, all of these things that you know, I was around and involved in and introduced to, you know, led to this moment. I want to carry on that idea of sharing the stories, and this is, you know, you're completely correct on, this is a story that needs to be told, and history that needs to be shared, and there's so many more individual stories and tales and histories that are tied to, you know, this single book. And that's the thing that I was able to learn and to find out, is that there's so many other, you know, people that are willing to share their experiences of their grandparents, their parents, and their great grandparents, and even themselves. So definitely it's a true history, a true, you know, glimpse of a small part of history, but definitely opens up a lot of dialogue, and that's what I'm really happy that it's that is, you know, building on.
Our fourth and final raffle is for Coming Home, a Hopi Story by Mavasta Honyouti. And I am so pleased to announce that our final raffle winner of the night is Bibi Muhammad Ali. So Bibi, congratulations. You will be receiving Coming Home, Hopi Story. Thank you everyone for coming and for letting me raffle these off to you. It's so exciting.
Congratulations to the raffle winners. It's always nice to win something, isn't it? I never do. I've never won a thing in my life, but I feel very lucky nonetheless. So this is me, Lynn, again for the last time. Thanking you for attending, hoping that we provided you with a very stimulating and inspiring program. And what we would like to do is to remind each and every one of us included, that each thing we do can create change. And we're all like little pebbles that get tossed into a pond and create a ripple effect. So whatever work it is you do, whether you're an author or an illustrator or a translator or an interested party or an editor, whatever work you do, keep in mind that we, through our work, which is crucial work, we have the ear of the next generation of kids. We can help create change for a better and more positive world. It's something that I like to try and think about every day, because I've been lucky enough to have this career where we get to talk to the generation coming up. So thank you for attending. Please feel free and come back and watch any part of this at any time. It will be available and up on all social media channels through SCBWI and also through YouTube. And we would like to hear about what you're doing. So you can write to me, Lynn Oliver at scbwi.org, if you're doing something quite wonderful, and we'd like to know about it, and perhaps we can highlight the work that you're doing. So to close us out, I want to introduce you to Linda Williams Jackson, who is an author, and she's a voice we need to all be hearing from. She is a recipient of one of our grants, which is the Stephen Fraser Encouragement Fund, given to 3 authors each year for no particular reason except that they're talented and they need some monetary and emotional encouragement. So we thank Stephen for sponsoring that. And now, as a final treat for you for the evening, let me introduce you to Linda Williams Jackson, reading from her work. Thank you and good night, and thank you for staying with us. Bye.
Hi, I am Linda Williams Jackson, and I am a Mississippi-based author who has written 3 works of historical fiction set in my home state of Mississippi. My first novel for middle grade readers is Midnight Without a Moon, and it is the story of Rose Lee Carter set in 1955 during the Emmett Till murder. My second novel, A Sky Full of Stars, is the sequel to Midnight Without a Moon, so it continues Rose's story into the fall of 1955 during the aftermath of the Emmett Till murder trial. My third novel, set in 1967, is the story of Ellis Earl Brown and his encounter with Senator Robert Kennedy during Robert Kennedy's poverty tour of the Mississippi Delta. And The Lucky Ones is loosely based on my own experiences growing up as a child in the Mississippi Delta. I will be reading to you today a passage from The Lucky Ones where Ellis Earl is having a conversation with his brother Oscar regarding the Fair Housing Act of 1969. And the reason that this passage is near and dear to me is because, like Ellis Earl, my family suffered from both housing and food insecurity. And the conversation that the boys are having is their longing for a new and better home, which is something that my siblings and I often longed for. The title of this chapter is What Bad Luck. Ellis Earl heard the rain hammering the tin roof before the first drop slipped through the ceiling and plopped on his face. "Ugh!" he groaned as he wiped his forehead. He was used to rain coming in through the roof. but it had never happened directly over the mattress where he and Oscar, and now his two nephews, slept. Ellis Earl shook his brother, who was snoring ever so gently. Oscar, wake up. We need to move the mattress. Rain coming in right here now. Oscar moaned and rolled over onto his back. As he did, a drop of rain went plop right into his eye, groggily repeating Ellis Earl's words. Rain coming in right here now? He sat up and eased his spindly legs to the floor. You think you can go get a pot from the kitchen while I move the mattress? Asked Ellis Earl. What bad luck, Ellis Earl thought. Now they had to find a new place to put the mattress, as there would be no repairs made to their rusty roof. And with the room as small as it was, there were few options. Careful not to wake his nephews, he slid the mattress over just enough so that it was out of the range of the drops of rain. Oscar returned with 2 large pots and 2 mixing bowls, which he and Ellis Earl placed around the room. They knew by heart where the rain dripped in. Oscar plopped down on the mattress. I wish we had a different house. Ellis Earl joined him on the mattress, saying nothing, only listening, as the rain hit the pots and bowls. But after a few moments, Ellis Earl stood abruptly and said, I just remembered something. What? Oscar asked, looking confused. Hold on. Ellis Earl rushed to the corner of the room to his school books. Though it was dark in the room, he was able to find the article clipped from Jet magazine. He knew exactly where it was because he had used it to mark the page in his math book. He returned to the mattress and showed the article to Oscar. I had to talk about this in class on Monday. I know it's too dark to see, but it says here that the president is working to pass laws for fair housing by 1969. What do that mean? Asked Oscar. I think it means that the president don't want people living in houses with rusted old tin roofs that leak. You think they'll have toilets inside like Uncle Joseph's house? I bet they will, said Ellis Earl, and they'll have sinks in the kitchen too. Won't that be nice? Oscar said, smiling. He lay back down on the mattress and rested his hands behind his head. I bet our new house is going to have paneling on the walls and maybe even rugs on the floor. And maybe we'll have a room and not have to sleep in the front room, said Ellis Earl. And a bed. We don't need 2. I don't mind sharing with you, said Oscar. No sense in being greedy. The boys grew quiet again for a moment before Oscar suddenly blurted out, Food. What about food? You think the President of the United States is planning on making sure we have some food with these new houses? Ellis Earl laughed a little. Who's going to put food in the house, little brother? You think the President of the United States is going to make somebody build some houses and put food in them? Yep, Oscar declared. A fair house with an icebox full of food. Well, come to think of it, Ellis Earl said, rubbing his chin. Mr. Foster did say something about a lady lawyer from Mississippi that went to Washington, D.C. last week and told them that people down here need food. Oscar's eyes grew wide. A lady lawyer? Get out of here. It's true, said Ellis Earl, and she's colored. Wow, said Oscar, shaking his head. Can't hardly believe that. Do you know her name? I forgot. Ellis Earl scratched his head. I think it was Mary or something. Oh, yeah, her name is Miss Mary Ann Wright. You think Miss Mary Ann Wright can get us some food? Ellis Earl shrugged. Maybe. Mr. Foster said there were some programs to help people get food. He said Miss Mary Ann Wright was trying to get those senators to come from Washington, D.C. and see that people in Mississippi don't have enough food to eat. I don't know how it works, but maybe she can get them to give us some food. Won't that be grand? Oscar said with a wide grin. It sure will be, said Ellis Earl. He hoped Mr. Foster was right. He hoped the senators would come. But why would they come all the way from Washington, D.C., just to see if people in Mississippi were poor or not? The chance of anybody other than Miss Mary Ann Wright caring about poor colored people in Mississippi was as slim as Charlie Bucket finding a golden ticket when he couldn't even buy a candy bar. Thank you so much for attending this reading, and I hope you have been encouraged